Hello and welcome back. Once again, this is Ryan Levesque here, and welcome back to our second live session of this week-long quiz funnel workshop, a once-a-year event where we walk through the process of creating your very own quiz funnel step by step. And today, we've got a good session. We're going to pick up from where we left off on our first session just a few short days ago. And today, we're going to be talking about the big idea behind your quiz, how to come up with the big idea behind your quiz. And we're actually going to figure this out together today. Like I said, we've got a jam-packed session here today, picking up on where we left off on the first session of our training, which was the quiz funnel paradox, where we talked about the importance of having a quiz funnel and why having the right strategy, the right training, the right technology, the right process is absolutely critical to be successful. Today, we're switching gears and we're talking about the big idea behind your quiz, coming up with the big idea behind your quiz. And the first thing that you want to make sure that you do is you go ahead and download the resource on the page, which is your big idea workbook. For those of you just joining us right now, I want to remind you where you get access to that. If you go to the screen right now, your big idea workbook at the bottom of the screen, it says download now. Click that big orange button, and once you've done that, you've downloaded, let me know inside the chat, let me know that you've got it, because we're going to be using that here today. The big idea workbook you can see right here looks a little something like this, and we're going to be going through this process together, coming up with your big idea, including going through this checklist, brainstorming your topic for your quiz, brainstorming the framework you're going to use for your quiz, choosing your top 4 big ideas, and taking the next step toward creating and designing your quiz. So we've got a series of steps that we're going to work through, a whole bunch of different examples and ideas and resources that you're going to want to get your hands on. So make sure that you go ahead and download this right here, right now, because we're going to work through this here together. Now, I want to remind you that we've got some fun prizes that we are giving away all week. And these prizes are for those of you who are most engaged, participating at the highest level, doing the most. And we've got 3 prizes that we're going to give away right here, right now, based on those of you who were on our first session and who just really brought it, really brought the participation, really gave 100% of yourself, were really engaged, really involved. And so our first 3 prizes of the day are going to be as follows. Our first prize is going to be winning a limited edition, first edition, hardcover signed copy of my most recent book, Choose. There are only a small handful of these left. First edition signed hardcover copies of this book. You're going to win one of these from my personal collection. And the winner of this first prize is the one, the only, Mandy Jo Rindage. Mary Jo Rindage, please join me in congratulating Mary Jo. Congratulations on winning that prize. That's our first prize of the day. Second prize of the day is winning something that you cannot buy, even though people have been asking left and right. You can only earn it, and that is one of these Kick Ask limited edition t-shirts that I am sporting right now. You can't buy it, you can only earn it, and this one right here is going to none other than the one, the only, Roz Kelly. Roz Kelly, congratulations, you're winning your very own t-shirt, just like the one that I'm wearing here today. And last but not least, third prize of the day is a $100 Amazon gift card that you can use to purchase anything of your choice on Amazon. And that $100 Amazon gift card is going to the one, the only, Mary Schlem. Mary Schlem, congratulations. If I called your name and you want to claim your prize, you've got to be here live in order to claim the prize, because this is all about participation. Send us an email at contact@askmethod.com. Let us know that Ryan just called out your name and you're eligible to win a prize, and we will hook you up and set you up. We'll need to know your address. We'll need to know your t-shirt size if you're winning a t-shirt. And for those of you who did not win in this first round of prizes, there are plenty more prizes to come. So keep that in mind. Please join me in congratulating Mandy, Roz, and Marie, our first 3 prize winners of the day. I want to remind you the way that you win prizes is by being active. And one of the things that you can do is participate in something that we call Hashtag Nugget. Hashtag Nugget is every step along the way as you hear and see something that tickles your fancy, that gives you an idea, that gives you an aha moment, that sparks curiosity in your mind. Take a moment inside the chat to use the Hashtag Nugget. Anytime that you see a little idea, it could be an insight, it could be a takeaway, it could be something that just kind of gets you thinking about the possibilities in your business. use that hashtag nugget and post it inside the chat, along with the nugget in what it might be. All right, before we get into coming up with your big idea, let's just do a quick recap on what we covered in our first session to kind of bring us all back to speed, get us all back here, get our brains thinking about what we're focused on here today, turn off everything else that's going on, get focused, and get present. So yesterday we talked about, first and foremost, what is a quiz funnel? And we talked about how a quiz funnel is very different from a quiz. This is not one of these time-wasting quizzes that you may have taken online from a WordPress plugin or one of these sites that helps you identify what Disney princess is your dog. This has nothing to do with that. This is a way of changing the way in which you do business. You begin instead by asking people a series of questions when they first land on your website to help understand who they are so you can ultimately better sell and better serve, like the Dad Superpower Quiz by Front Row Dads right here. We even talked about an opportunity to take a real-life quiz funnel so you can see what this looks like in action by going to takethefunnelquiz.com to find out what type of funnel is right for you. We talked about why now in 2022, the conditions and how the world has changed in the last 12 months, and how, according to the Edelman Trust Barometer, for the first time in history, the default state of the world is a state of distrust, which led to the privacy wars of 2021 between Apple and Facebook, and subsequently the release of iOS 14.5, which for the first time ever made it such that users could choose if they wanted their personal data to be shared with the big tech companies like Facebook, like Google, and so on and so forth. 88% of people opted out of this new paradigm, which led to Facebook and Google scrambling to change the way in which advertisers and content creators can put their content, their products, their services in front of their customers. And that means all of us right here. You can see here that the algorithm has changed. The pixel is now gone in the way that we previously know it. And that Facebook, also known as Meta, is developing a new basic ad product which has no targeting whatsoever, which has then subsequently shifted this world from a third party to first party to now zero party data world. Zero party data, what that means, a term that was first coined by Forrester Research Institute. This is information that when website visitors come to your website, they are explicitly and voluntarily sharing with you. It's a shift away from spying on people in the background to asking people about their situation. So to sum things up, in this new iOS 14.15 world, you must have a way to both target and segment your customers that relies 100% on capturing your own zero-party data. And of course, the way that we do that is with the power of quiz funnels. We talked about how quiz funnels work for all different types of products and all different types of situations, from e-commerce, digital products, affiliate marketing, building your email list, getting coaching clients, getting consulting clients, getting clients as a freelancer, for lead generation, if you're using webinars and workshops, if you're doing launches, or even if you are a complete beginner. And how quiz funnels work in virtually any language underneath the sun. Any language in the world, from Norwegian to Italian to Danish to Spanish to Dutch to Swedish to German to Japanese, Chinese. In fact, our team has worked with clients and we have helped build quiz funnels in over 47 different languages around the world. And speaking of building funnels, we have been involved in this for the last 10 plus years. We are a 5-time Inc. 5000 fastest growing company in the United States, been featured in everywhere from the Wall Street Journal to Harvard Business Review. We have helped clients build over 12,000 quiz funnels, generate over 30 million quiz takers, and generate over $62 million ourselves in just the last few years. We talked about the 5 different types of businesses that can use quiz funnels, everything from selling physical products, e-commerce, like for example, the bicycle quiz that we looked at in our first day together that generated over $22,000 in its first week. We talked about digital products and how the saxophone quiz resulted in a former teacher to triple her income and make over 6 figures, $150,000 a year on the back of this strategy that you see right here. We talked about client services, like using a quiz funnel for generating coaching, consulting, agency, and freelancing clients, like this new mom who generates over $17,000 per week, going from 0 to 6 figures, all on the back of her quiz funnel. We talked about local small businesses, like for example, the medical facility that's using a quiz funnel to generate an additional $17,000 a month in new revenue derived online all through this process. And we talked about using a quiz funnel to generate leads for your business. Like, for example, this privacy consultant in a B2B market who went from zero to over $1 million a year in her consultancy, all on the back of a quiz funnel. And for those of you who are complete beginners, we talked about the 3 fastest paths to cash. Like, for example, using a pre-launch quiz. Like Dr. Tangi Watkins, who went from $0 to $20,000 in her first month in business, all on the back of her pre-launch quiz. We talked about using an affiliate quiz, selling somebody else's product as an affiliate, just like Jeff and Mark do every single day. And last but not least, we talked about building quizzes for clients and how for some of us, the fastest path to cash is actually charging other businesses money to build quizzes for them. And that's exactly what Adam did in his very first quiz that he built for a client. It generated a 5-figure sale, over $10,000 to create that quiz for someone else. So we're going to dive into our first micro exercise right now. And this is a pickup from our homework on day 1. My question for you is as follows. Based on all the ideas swimming in your mind, everything that we talked about at our first session together, what do you think you are going to be selling through your quiz funnel? Take a moment inside the chat to let me know, what are you going to be selling and what is the price point of that offer? So in other words, if you are thinking about selling your coaching services and your coaching services are, I don't know, $1,000 a month, you could say, I'm selling my coaching services $1,000 a month. If you're selling a digital course on, I don't know, home organization, you can type in home organization course for $100 if that's the cost of your course. If you're selling a physical iPhone case on the back of your quiz, you can say my iPhone case that I sell for $40 or whatever it may be. Take a moment and type what you think you're going to be selling in your quiz. And the reason for that is this is the first important step for figuring out the big idea behind your quiz, which is our focus here today. So go ahead, post it inside the chat. I want to get a sense for what we are selling here. And if you're not sure yet, it's okay. You can say, I'm not sure. Just take your best guess. What do you think you might sell? Remember, this is not etched in concrete. It's not permanent. You can always change it. This is just for our purposes here today, to get your brain thinking about the possibilities and to pick something. And if you're not sure what to pick, pick a practice idea. Pick a practice quiz. It doesn't have to be your final quiz. Like I said yesterday in the Q&A session, your first quiz is unlikely to be your last quiz. So just pick something for today's purposes and we can keep moving forward. So inside the chat, I'm going to take a look and see what we have. Group coaching, 8-week program for $14.95, says Lori. Cindy, coaching services, $2,500. Something on ClickBank for quick cash, says Early Bird. Helen says beta course and community at 100 pounds. Katie says a 4-module program for $297. Beverly Consulting, $1,500 a month. Pat selling business coaching at $1,000 a month. Jill says HR advisory services and career coaching. Online course and thought leadership for $397, says Denise. Katie says chakra wisdom for goal setting, private session at $97. Debbie says bookkeeping and tax preparation services for $200 to $2,000. Cecilia says, I want to sell my Facebook ads course, $1,500, and sell the pre-launch subscription mobile app at $10 each. Rael says, my membership program, $500. Skin says, my coaching services, $151,000. Bernardo says, high ticket love and relationship coaching at $2,000 a month. Monique says, coaching for $3,000 for 6 months. Affiliate link or a book, same quiz funnel for $240 to $15. Joel says, my digital coaching product for divorce. Cindy, Ray, rug hooking instruction. Lacey, 3-month membership for $1,500. Richie's health supplement for $35. So you can see the diversity of what we have here. This is super exciting. So I want you to keep in mind that thing that you're thinking of selling and actually take a moment to write it down in your notes so you have it front and center. What are you going to be selling on the back of your quiz? And what are you going to be selling it for? And if you don't have anything to sell right now, you can just drive people to a pre-launch quiz, but think about the topic that you want to drive people to so you can better understand their situation. Now, the reason why this is so important is because if you remember from yesterday's session, we talked about the 3 psychological forces behind creating a quiz. You remember what they are? Post them inside the chat. Who remembers what the 3 psychological forces were? One of them started with the word M and had the word micro in it, and that was micro commitment. Now, micro commitment is what I just invited you to do right now, right? To take a tiny little baby step. Instead of just figuring out what your whole quiz is going to be about, let's start small. Let's figure out what are you going to be selling. That is a micro commitment in action. That's one of the psychological forces behind why quizzes are so powerful. Next up is self-discovery. What are we doing right here in this session? You're going to discover the big idea behind your quiz, the power of self-discovery. And last but not least, what's that third psychological force? ADP, attract, diagnose, and prescribe. What are we doing? We're diagnosing here today your business to prescribe the right type of quiz for you. So in many ways, this is kind of like a meta session where we're going to be using all three of those psychological forces that make a quiz funnel so effective, but we're going to be using them in today's live workshop. So keep all that in mind. Now, last but not least, I want to talk about and remind you about the 3 reasons why quiz funnels are so effective. And I want to give you access to a resource I did not share with you on day one. It's a new resource that I think you're going to find really helpful as you think about the quiz that you're building, what you're selling, and the price point that you are selling at. So who remembers the 3 reasons why quizzes are so effective? Reason number 1 was what? Incredibly cheap leads, right? Like we saw here in Carrie Green's quiz, going from $4 per lead to less than 80 cents per lead, completely opening up the possibilities in her business. We talked about how you can get leads at anywhere from 1/3 to 1/10 the cost. But it's not just about cheap leads. We also talked about reason number 2, incredibly high conversion. So you can often double to triple your sales conversion rate on the back of your quiz because you're customizing your copy, your offer, your messaging, and so forth. And then we also talked about reason number 3, remember? Do quizzes work slow or do quizzes work fast? Quizzes work fast, right? Incredibly fast results because they're interactive, because people are engaging with them right away. It's not like an ebook that they say, oh, I'll read that someday maybe, or a podcast episode that they say, I'll listen to that when I have time. A quiz funnel is something that people engage with right away in real time. Just like you see here in Dawn Terwillinger's quiz funnel, she launched her quiz, got 61 people to take her quiz, resulted in a $10,000 client in less than a week. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the profit potential behind your quiz. So keep in mind the dollar amount of the product that you just mentioned a moment ago. So that price point that you just wrote down in chat or wrote down in your notes, I want to invite you to think about the profit potential of your quiz, thinking about that number. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to a resource that I'm going to share with you now. It's a new resource. You haven't seen this before. It's on my screen. And if you want, you can get access to this at any time down the road by going to the link quizfunnel.com/quiz-calculator, quizfunnel.com/quiz-calculator. Don't go to it right now so you can be present, but just so you know, you've got that link, you can go to it at your convenience down the road. And what this resource does is it's going to help you calculate the value and the profit potential of your quiz based on the price point that you are selling. So if I zoom this in just a little bit more and show you what this looks like here, I'll orient you to this calculator resource. This resource is going to help you identify your cost per lead, how many leads you're generating per day, per week, per month, per year, and your conversion of those leads. Now, you'll remember from what we just talked about a moment ago that with a quiz funnel, you can often get leads anywhere from 30 to 90% cheaper than the standard way of doing things. You can often get results 5 to 25 times faster by working on a quiz funnel as opposed to the traditional way of selling online. And you can get a conversion rate 2 to 3 times higher. So let's take a look at what kind of impact that can have in your business. Now, what you're looking at right here are baseline numbers from a traditional funnel, not a quiz funnel, before applying the quiz. So you can think about this as the before scenario. And let's say, for example, you are selling a $50 product and you are paying $2.50 per lead. Really what that means, and I'll show you the math on how that works out, what that means is this. If you go to my iPad here for a minute, in other words, what that means is if you spend $100 on advertising, and that $100 can be spent anywhere. You could spend that $100 on Facebook, on Google, you could spend it in a newspaper ad, you could, rent a billboard in your town, radio advertising, on LinkedIn, on Pinterest, wherever. Just think, you spend $100 on advertising. And let's say if you get 100 leads on that $100, so 100 people to sign up for your email list that join your audience, those 100 leads are costing you what? How much per lead? They're going to cost you $1, what we say CPL, cost per lead. Make sense? You spend $100, you get 100 leads. Cost per lead is $1 CPL, right? Now let's say you get 200 leads. 200 leads for that same $100, different scenario. What's your cost per lead in this scenario? In this case here, it's going to be half as much. It's going to be 50 cents cost per lead. We're doing good, right? 200 leads. Now, conversely, if we only get 50 leads for that $100 spend, what's our cost per lead? In this case here, $100 divided by 50 equals $2 cost per lead. Does that make sense? Now, why do we spend so much time on leads? Well, the reason, and this is something that one of my mentors just infused in my brain, and this is worth writing down. Leads are the lifeblood of every business. Leads are the lifeblood of every business. If you don't have leads, you don't have anything. It's kind of like if you've got a garden, the water is the lifeblood of that garden. If you don't have water coming to your garden, nothing's going to live, nothing's going to grow, nothing's going to thrive. The same thing is true with a business. If you don't have leads coming into your business, nothing else happens. Leads are the lifeblood of every business. So when we look at leads, it's the arguably most important metric when you talk about the top of your funnel and bringing people into your world. So when we go back to our calculator right here, you can see in this example, we're saying it's $2.50 per lead in this just kind of baseline example. This is the pace that you're getting leads, 10 leads a day, and this is the sales conversion, meaning the percent of people who opt in, who sign up for your list, who sign up for whatever it is that you're giving away for free, who purchase. And in case you're wondering, these numbers are all very reasonable and realistic. Now, this number up here, $2.50, that's going to vary from market to market. Some markets are $25, some markets are 25 cents. It just depends on your geography, what you're selling, the market you're in, and so on and so forth. This number down here, 5%, sales conversion, that number is also very realistic. Remember, this is the percent of people who not visit your website, but who sign up for your thing, who sign up for your quiz. What percent of those people actually purchase? In case you're wondering, when we built our Orchid business, that number for us was 14%. We would convert 14% of people who take our quiz into one of our products. So the number 5% is very reasonable. Now, if you look at these baseline numbers, if we switch this over on a per month basis, what you're going to find is that you can take a look at the numbers right here. In this scenario, you're making $700, $760 per month in revenue, but you're not making any profit. In other words, your cost per lead offsets the revenue that you make. So you're not making money, you're not losing money, but you're breaking even, right? Let's take a look at what can happen when you make the switch to a quiz. So let's say, for example, that you're able to cut your cost per lead on the low end of our spectrum. You cut it by, say, 30%. Okay? Let's say that instead of a 5% sales conversion, you are doubling that and you're doing a, call it 10% sales conversion. And remember, these are the percent of people who take your quiz. And instead of getting 10 leads per day, let's say, for example, you are getting 50 leads per day. So you've gone from $2.50 per lead to $1.75, from 10 leads per day to 50 leads per day because you're able to move so much faster, and from a 5% sales conversion to a 10% sales conversion. Take a look at what this does. You went from not making any money at all before using a quiz funnel to now making $4,942 per month using a quiz funnel. Now, it gets even more interesting when we push the numbers a little bit further. Let's say, for example, you're able to get leads 50% cheaper than you were a little bit earlier. And let's say instead of 50 leads per day, you're pushing the envelope and maybe you're getting, I don't know, 100 leads per day. And you're keeping that same sales conversion rate. Well, now you're doing $11,000 a month in profit, and we look on an annual basis, you're doing over 6 figures per year in profit, all by making a few simple shifts and changes following everything that you'll be learning about in this workshop and beyond using a well-designed quiz funnel. All right, let's take a look at another scenario. Let's say, for example, instead of selling a $50 product, and I'm going to reset all of these numbers right here. Let's say we go back to this right here. We go back to this right here. We go back to this right here. But instead of selling a $50 product, 'cause I know there are many of us here that are selling products at a much higher price point. Let's say, for example, you're selling a $1,000 coaching package. And let's say that your your conversion rate is lower because it is a higher price product. And let's say your cost per lead is a lot higher as well. Maybe you're paying $50 per lead because of what's happening. We're going to go back to a monthly basis. You can see right here, every single month under this before scenario, this is before applying the quiz. Even though you're selling a $1,000 product, you're losing $7,000 a month. You're doing worse than break even. You're actually losing money. But once again, let's take a look at what can happen when you make a few simple shifts. Let's say instead of $50 a lead, we're saving that same 30% right here, right? Instead of a 2.5% conversion rate, we're just doubling that to a 5% conversion rate on where we were before. Now, all of a sudden, we're making $4,560 per month in profit. We went from losing money to making money. Now, let's say, for example, we're feeling really good and we want to push the envelope. So we said, all right, I'm actually making money now. Let's scale this business. Let's push the envelope. And let's go from doing 10 leads a day to 10xing that number to 100 leads a day. All of a sudden now, the quiz is making $45,000 per month in profit and on an annual basis. And by the way, this is not just revenue, this is profit. This is the money that you keep, the money that flows into your pocket, the money that goes into your bank account at the end of the day. You can see right here. This is how you build a $1 million plus quiz that can make you $500,000 a year in profit. These are the numbers right here. In fact, this profit potential, this is the same way that so many of the examples that I've shared with you have generated these results. People like Charlie Wallace in the guitar market going from $0 to $2.2 million a year. People like Buck Rizvi building his weight loss quiz, making over $12 million a year. People like Andy Mackinson building his Snack Nation quiz, making over $24 million per year. And it's not just people who are scaling to millions of dollars, it's total beginners as well. People like Janine, who generated her first 3 clients on the back of her quiz in just 16 days. Janine was building a podcast and spent 2 years painstakingly building an audience via her podcast. She made more results and more money and got more clients in just 16 days with her quiz than she did 2 years of building her podcast. Like, for example, people like Christine, who generated 29 clients in just 3 months on the back of her quiz funnel. People like Thomas and Gabby Rast, as I mentioned, in the horse market, 13,000 leads, $22,000 a month. People like Del Shield, a retired Lutheran pastor who in his 60s, 65 years old, launches his very first quiz funnel in the real estate market, generates over $1.2 million in real estate sales. The bottom line is this. Not only does this strategy help you better sell, it also helps you better serve. And what I'd love to do now, before we get down and dirty, before we get all the work in, I want to inspire you with stories of people who are using this right now as we speak, following the framework I just shared with you, using that calculator, getting those types of numbers, what's been possible for them. So with that being said, let's check it out and hear in their own words what a quiz has done for them.
I knew my clients needed something more. They didn't just need a website. They needed a way to generate leads.
The book funnel wasn't working as well anymore, and we had no real strategies to fix it.
I had all this content. You want to have an impact on people. I think an email came through about a quiz funnel and something went ding, and I tried it. I said, what have I got to lose?
And as soon as I saw what quiz funnels could do, I told myself, hey, this is it. Here is the answer to our #1 marketing obstacle.
If you don't want to get stopped by the iOS changes, then you want to be building your own email list and not having to rely on Facebook ad targeting, where privacy and data is always changing.
We reached the 10,000 leads generated by the quiz.
We went from 400 members at $18 a month. When we launched a quiz funnel, we almost immediately doubled our membership because now they knew that we could help them move forward. And over the course of the last 3 years, we've now crossed the 4,000 member mark.
In just 1 month, we more than doubled the number I was up to maybe about 18,000 by the time I launched the quiz. And within a month, I was up another 10,000.
Since implementing this, a 28% increase in our business.
I'm like, I can't believe that people converted. Like, I just was just blown away, you know? So it was amazing. It was such an amazing experience.
My market grows from 5 to 10K yearly to 40, 50 yearly.
Wow. There's a particular company that is a subsidiary of a larger company. And they took my quiz. They are now a client who then introduced me to other sister companies that we now are working with.
You can see potential in the same results that I got. I mean, it was such a big change once I got it out there, and I'm really pleased that I did.
You've tested so many different models, you've had so much experience that we just felt we were in good hands. And I love working with organizations where you're like, oh, it just feels like here's what we're gonna do next, guys, and they could guide you.
So we've heard from story after story after story, and hopefully by now you've got it. You've decided that this is the right strategy to be using right here, right now, because we're seeing person after person, result after result, getting new leads, new customers, launching their quiz, working with our team, getting these results, starting from scratch, building incredible momentum. But you might be wondering, why aren't more people getting results like that? Well, it all starts with 5 big mistakes. And what I want to invite you to do now is take something to take some notes with, because we're going to go through the process of the biggest mistakes that people make, especially when it comes to coming up with your big idea and creating your quiz, and what you should be doing instead. So if we go right here, you're going to see the 5 biggest mistakes, big idea, and I encourage you to write this down alongside with me. We're going to go through these mistakes one by one and dissect what they are and what to do instead. Beginning with mistake number 1, which is using the wrong tool. Mistake number 1, using the wrong technology. Now, in yesterday's Q&A session, one of the questions that came up over and over and over again is, Ryan, what technology do I use to create my quiz? And I came across this image a while back that always makes me chuckle anytime I see it, and it's this person right here. This person right here clearly is using the wrong tool for the job. Now, is she getting the job done or he getting the job done? I think so, but you know, it's a lot harder than it needs to be. As I said yesterday, it's kind of like cutting a coconut with a plastic knife. Can you do it? Maybe, if you're on a deserted island and you've got nothing else, but why make your life so difficult? The one thing that every single one of the examples that we've shared here have in common is that they all use the same technology. And that's the same technology that you've been hearing me talk about, which is a tool called Bucket.io, quizzes that convert. For creating pages, for creating your questions, for building your canvas, for doing your integrations, your logic, your setup, your connection points to every other piece of your business, combining all the best elements of the various forms of technology that you might use. Of course, Bucket.io, quizzes that convert. Now, we're going to be talking about technology in more detail in the 3rd session that we have here today, which is on Friday this week. I'm even going to give you a peek inside the technology itself. I'm going to go deep inside the technology. You can see exactly how it works. You can see how you create a quiz, how it all works, what the tools are, because I know some of us love seeing and geeking out over that technology. But before you can focus on the technology, you've got to have the right strategy. You've got to have the right strategy. So mistake number 1, if we go to our iPad here, is the wrong technology. That's the first big mistake, which we'll be covering in more detail on day 3 of this workshop, Friday, our 3rd session, I should say. But the next big mistake that I want to talk about is mistake number 2, which is the wrong process. Because before you can really focus on technology, you've got to have the right strategy. I see so many people who just want to get their hands on the tools, and it's like, well, I could sell you an airplane. I could put an airplane in your driveway right now, but would you know how to fly it? If you've taken flight school and you've got 1,000 commercial, hours of flying a private jet, then yeah, you could probably do it. But for most people, they're not starting that way. they haven't had that experience. And so I want to first talk a little bit about the right strategy for coming up with your quiz and coming up with your big idea. And that takes us to the second mistake, the wrong process. Now, when it comes to building your quiz, there is a process that every single successful quiz follows. And that is what we're going to cover here in this session right now. Whenever you create anything in life, you want to create and follow a blueprint, right? So if you're building a house, you have a blueprint and you start with something that looks like this, you build a house that looks like that, right? Now, if you don't follow a blueprint, you run the risk of having a house that looks like this. You have a staircase that leads to nowhere. Now, just pause for a minute and look at this. Like, what was this person thinking? What's going on right here, right? Like, were they going to put a door there? Like, I don't know what's going on. But I can't tell you how many times I see people who create quizzes, they rush through the process and they end up creating a staircase that leads to nowhere. Every single successful quiz funnel follows the same exact blueprint. It's something that we call the quiz creation flow, and it looks like this. Every quiz has 3 distinct phases. What we call the welcome step, which is designed to attract people to take your quiz, followed by a series of questions, which are designed to diagnose and prescribe, the outcome that someone faces, which is the prescription. Attract, diagnose, prescribe. Now, in marketing terms, this corresponds to what we call the hook, the bridge, and the offer. So we have this 3-part process that every quiz funnel follows. And if you're more of a visual person like I am, it looks a little something like this. The hook is a page or a post that looks like this, followed by a bridge, which represents a series of questions that you're asking, which then ultimately leads to the offer, one of several different variations that you're putting people in front of based on the combination of answers that they provide. Now, this is the order in which someone takes your quiz when your quiz is out there in the wild, but the way you build your quiz is not necessarily the order in which someone takes your quiz. You've got to build your quiz in a specific order. Any guesses on where you begin? Post it inside the chat. Where do you think you begin? What's the first thing that you want to begin with when it comes to the process of creating your quiz? Do you start at the beginning? Do you start at the middle? Or do you start at the end? See, you got to begin with the end in mind. Now, this is the first big mistake that people make, is they begin creating their quiz in the order in which someone takes it, but you actually want to begin with the end in mind. This ensures that you're not building a staircase that leads to nowhere, but you are building a staircase to that thing that you told me about a few minutes ago inside chat. Remember you said, I'm going to be selling blankety blank for blank amount of money? This ensures that your quiz leads directly to that thing. And then from there, we start back at the beginning, which is coming up with your hook, and then we connect those 2 pieces together with the bridge. Now, looking at this order right here, this takes us to the 3rd big mistake. Mistake number 3, which is the wrong offer. The wrong offer. Now, what is an offer exactly? Go ahead and post it inside the chat. What is an offer? When I ask this question, I ask 50 people this question, I typically get 50 different answers. So what is the offer? Go ahead, post it inside the chat. I want to take a look and see what we have. Love it. Start with the end in mind. Beautiful. Lots of great takeaways here indeed. Start with the end, from the end, indeed. Yes. So when we talk about offer, and we want to begin with the end in mind, there are 2 elements to this. So first is what to offer, right? So what are you going to offer? And that's where you start to get clarity earlier in this session, thinking about what you're selling and at what price point. Because at the end of the day, the name of the game on the back of a quiz funnel is to sell something to people who take your quiz. This is not one of these WordPress plugin fake quizzes that you've seen online where people just answer a few simple questions and you give them the result. That's not going to get the job done. You are going to be disappointed with your results. You need to have the right pieces in place that naturally segue people, not like these quizzes right here, what Disney princess is your dog, but segue people directly into your offer. I like to think about it like this. I like to think about it like this. It's sort of like if you have this visual in your mind. Imagine playing on a playground, maybe with your kids or nephews or nieces or grandchildren or whatever, right? You're playing on your playground. You want to think about your quiz as being the slide at the playground that you can slide right down. And imagine if there's like a starched pair of jeans, a starched pair of pants, trousers at the bottom of that slide, and you slide right down the slide and your legs go right into those pants. You want your quiz to feel like that greased slide that goes right into your offer. But everybody who takes your quiz, they're just sliding down the quiz, and the thing that's right for them, they have that right fit pair of pants that they just slide right into. If you have a mismatch, if your quiz funnel is not connected directly to the thing that you're thinking about selling, and there isn't a psychological bridge, there isn't a seamless transition, yeah, you're gonna have a quiz. Yeah, you might have a bunch of people who take it, but I'll tell you how many people are gonna buy your product. None. So when people get obsessed with the technology is one piece of the equation, but you've got to have the right strategy. You've got to have the right marketing angle, the right finesse to lead people right down that grease slide into that starched pair of pants that turn out to be the perfect fit for your prospect. So you can sell everything from physical products, digital products, client services, local small business services. You can use your quiz to generate leads. As we talked about, if you've got no product, no problem, just use a pre-launch list, create a pre-launch quiz to figure out what people want, send people into a survey after they take your quiz. That's exactly what Dr. Tangi Watkins did to go from nothing to $20,000 in her first month in her coaching practice. That's exactly what Beverly Asante Pushman did for her pre-launch quiz into her book. That's exactly what Christine did to generate her first clients. And so many of the examples that you've heard me share, Lynette, Linda, Elisa, generating 9 sales in less than 1 week. So we've covered what to offer. You should have some clarity on that. And if you're still figuring it out, that's perfectly okay. But what I want to focus our attention on now is how you present that offer. How do you create that experience where it's like sliding down the playground slide and landing straight into that pair of pants, where it is just a seamless transition from taking your quiz to buying your product. Whether that's buying your product directly or booking a call with you, signing up for your workshop, signing up for your webinar, joining your challenge, joining your Facebook group, whatever that next step that you want people to take. So how you present that offer is broken down into 2 parts. And we're gonna stay right here on the screen for just a moment. 2 parts to taking and figuring out exactly what people want. And the 2 parts are as follows. We call them Band-Aid and Cure. Let me explain what that means exactly, right? So as you know, I've got young kids, and so all my examples that I'm constantly sharing are examples of, young kid stuff. So I want you to imagine for a moment that you've got young kids, and this happens to my boys all the time. For those of you on the Q&A, my 2 boys popped in and said hey for a few minutes, and then they were off playing outside, doing what young boys do, playing sports and playing in the woods and, picking up bugs and everything like that. And I can't tell you how many times one of my kids will be playing outside and then they run inside, and usually they go to my wife, but sometimes they'll come to me and they'll say, Daddy, Mommy, I need a Band-Aid, right? Because that's what all small kids think they need, right? They hurt themselves, they fall on their knees, they get a cut, they need a Band-Aid because they think the Band-Aid is gonna make the boo-boo feel better. But what do we know as adults, right? What do we know? We know that the Band-Aid is not gonna make the boo-boo feel better. But before we can convince that kiddo to put some ice on his knee or to take a little bit of Tylenol or whatever that kind of treatment that is gonna help them feel better, what do we need to do? We gotta put the Band-Aid on the knee. We gotta let the tears dry away. We gotta give the kiddo a little hug. We're gonna say, hey, sweetheart, if you really wanna make that feel better, we're gonna have to put some ice on it, right? Now, as the expert, as the adult, that the Band-Aid doesn't solve the problem, but your kiddo, or in the case of your business, your consumer, thinks that the Band-Aid is the solution. So we gotta give people the Band-Aid before we can introduce the what? The cure. This is where Band-Aid Cure comes in. Now, in a quiz funnel paradigm, the Band-Aid is the quiz result that you give people for free. The cure is your paid product or service, which is your offer. So people take your quiz, you deliver real value in the form of a Band-Aid, and you let them know if they really want to solve their problem, that the next step to take is to invest in your cure. Band-Aid cure. This is the paradigm. This is how you transition someone from quiz taker to client. Now, the important takeaway is that people don't know that they need your cure. They're not walking around right now saying that, oh, I need to buy your coaching package for $1,000 a month, or oh, I need to buy your course for $400. They are not walking around thinking that they need that right now. What they think they need is the Band-Aid. Now, examples of Band-Aid to cure transition. I'll do a few examples here as you start to think about your Band-Aid to cure transition in your quiz. You can check it out right here. This is Bob Bastian. Bob was working on a quiz for his men's face wash and moisturizer that he sells for $57. So he created a quiz. What skincare mistakes are you making? Right? People want to know, why is my skin so dry? What mistake am I making? Is it the wrong product? Do I have the wrong water? Am I washing it too much? Like, what am I doing wrong with my skin that's causing it to be so dry? Take this quiz to find out the results, and his solution, his cure, is his face wash and moisturizer. This is Ricky Suleiman. Ricky has a life insurance business. She sells a product in the $1,000-ish price point. She sells life insurance for $200 to $1,000. She has a quiz. What type of life insurance is right for you? Take the quiz to find out now. For those of you selling a product in the tens of thousands of dollars, this is Adrian. Adrian has a quiz to figure out what to help people purchase his online fitness coaching program, which nobody is walking around saying, oh, you know what I need? I need Adrian's fitness coaching program. So he creates a quiz. What's your body's strength index? How strong are you really relative to how strong you should be? Take this quiz to find out now. So you can see these are examples of Band-Aid cure. So when we talk about our 5 biggest mistakes, the third big mistake is the wrong offer. Not just what you're selling, but how you are presenting it. This is where Band-Aid cure comes in. This takes us to mistake number 4, which is the wrong hook. The wrong hook. What do I mean by hook exactly, right? What do I mean by hook? I'd love if you would, inside the chat, tell me what you think when you hear the word hook in a marketing context. What does that mean to you? Go ahead, inside the chat, type in hook and what that definition means. What does that mean to you when you hear hook? Because when it comes to a quiz, mistake number 4, the wrong hook, is absolutely critical to getting right. Now, the hook, remember, is the thing that attracts people to your quiz in the first place. And when we talk about a quiz funnel, it is all about the hook. So what is a hook exactly? I'll take a look inside the chat. And team, we may need to speed up the chat a little bit so we can catch up to where we're at to make sure that we have the comments lining up with the questions. Love this right now. Hook could be a headline, the bait that pulls people in. It could be grabbing attention. What grabs attention? Title that grabs attention. Great answers right here. Hook is the copy that grabs attention. It's what the fish wants. Hook is what grabs your attention, grabs you. Love it. So it's the attention grabbing element, just like if you were fishing, like actually fishing for real, you've got a hook on the end of your line that attracts the fish that you're trying to catch, right? So the hook is the thing that attracts what you are looking to make happen, who you're trying to attract in your world. And as I mentioned, when it comes to a quiz funnel, it is all about the hook. This is what makes or breaks quizzes. You've got a bad, boring hook, you ain't gonna get anybody to click on your quiz. You've got a curiosity-inducing, compelling, incredibly attractive hook, you're gonna be fishing and you're gonna be catching fish all day. It's the same thing. If you've ever gone fishing before and you've sat out there and you've caught no fish, or you've had a day where you've got more fish than you can actually handle, that's the difference between a good hook and a bad hook. Now, when it comes to the hook for your quiz funnel, the hook in your quiz funnel is essentially the big idea behind your quiz. And that's what we're going to be spending the majority of our time here today figuring out, which is your big idea. But there's one last mistake I want to touch on before we circle back to your big idea, and that is this. Mistake number 5, which is asking the wrong questions in your quiz. Again, it's not enough to just slap a simple little quiz on your website and just throw a few questions together. They've got to be the right questions. You've got to ask the right questions. Mistake number 5 is the wrong questions because, again, the questions that you ask represent the bridge between your hook and your offer. Now, when it comes to coming up with your questions, and we're not going to spend too much time on this here today, but just to kind of give you a sense for what that process looks like, when we work with a client, when we work with a student to figure out what your questions are, the process looks like this. We begin by brainstorming your question structure, figuring out how you're going to be structuring all the pieces. Then we lay it out in a way that's going to line up with all the different possibilities of where you might be sending people. We map these questions back to your outcomes, and with this information, design the architecture of your quiz funnel. Now, when it comes to questions, there are a few best practices that I want to draw your attention to, and we're going to talk about them right now. Because first things first, there are 5 types of questions that you want to think about asking in your quiz. So 5 types of questions. Let's talk about what these questions are. You can excuse my handwriting here. 5 types of questions, beginning with the first type of question, question number 1, which is what we call a grease the wheels question. Now, for those of you who don't speak American English, grease the wheels is really just an expression to get things moving. It means to get things moving. So when we talk about greasing the wheels, what we're talking about is creating action, taking momentum. Now, a grease the wheels question is the first question that you ask in your quiz, and it should be a simple, non-threatening, easy to answer question that gets people started. Remember the micro commitment that we talked about at the beginning of this session? Remember when we said, start with something simple, start with something small, tiny little baby steps, stepping stones? That's what we're talking about here. A grease the wheels question gets things going. If you have taken some of our quizzes in our business, you might be presented with questions like, are you starting a new business or growing an existing business? Are you trying to sell one main product or multiple products? Simple, easy to answer questions that get the ball rolling. That's what a grease the wheels question is, and it should be the first question in every quiz. Next type of question that we want to be thinking about is what we call diagnosis questions. Diagnosis questions are questions that you're asking to diagnose a person's situation. So you might want to ask a series of questions to better understand who they are so you can put them into one of several buckets. Now, diagnosis questions are questions that you use to steer people in one of several different directions. You're using it just like the doctor to identify what prescription is right for you. So those are diagnosis questions. Now, many people think, shouldn't all your questions in your quiz be diagnosis questions? But that's not the case. Remember yesterday I said that there are layers, and we're peeling away layers to the process? And there are different reasons why you ask different questions. There are different psychological elements that are involved to get people to move forward and not just take your quiz, but create demand and desire for the thing that you're selling after your quiz. Well, that's where some of these next types of questions are coming into play, like question type number 3, what we call demographic questions. Demographic questions help you better understand the other person on the back of your quiz. Now, you might not be customizing the quiz results based on those demographics, but with that information, you might be able to better serve that individual. Knowing if someone is a man or a woman, if they are a parent or a grandparent, if they are a teacher or a principal. You might not use that information to put people in a different bucket, but you can use that information to customize your follow-up, customize your emails, customize your advertising, customize your content, your messaging that you put in front of different people. Next up, we have what are called story arc questions. Story arc questions are questions that sometimes you need to put in place to create a much more seamless question experience. You can't have your quiz feel like it is an intrusive survey where you're asking people information for the sake of just asking for information. It needs to feel like what? What's that word that begins with C that we keep talking about? It is a conversation. The story arc questions keep the conversation flowing so it flows naturally from what you're asking to where you want to take people. You want it to feel as natural as possible. So story arc questions are questions that you insert in between that kind of keep that conversation flow and make it so natural. Next up, we've got the 5th type of question, type number 5, which is what we call our lead capture question. Lead capture is where you're asking for a person's contact information so that you can A, give them their quiz results in exchange for that contact information, but B, you're also using it so that you can follow up with that individual who doesn't purchase from you right away. So there are 5 types of questions that you always want to ask, but there are also 3 types of questions that you want to avoid. So 3 types of questions to avoid are as follows. 3 questions to avoid, beginning with question number 1. You want to avoid, first and foremost, yes, no questions. Why do you think you want to avoid yes, no questions? Post it inside the chat. What do you think is the reason why we avoid yes, no questions in our quiz? What do you think? We don't want to have yes, no questions. I know some of you are thinking, wait, I'm going to have a whole bunch of yes, no questions. Like this just totally burst my bubble. It burst the air out of my balloon. Why do we avoid yes, no questions? We avoid yes, no questions because, why do you think? I'm going to check inside the chat to see if we are guessing this right now. The reason why we avoid yes, no questions, yes, no can be a dead end. Yes. What happens if someone says no? What happens if you've got a quiz and someone answers no? Question number 1. Question number 2, no. Question number 3, no. Question number 4, no. Question number 5, no, no, no. And you ask them, hey, would you like to buy my product? What command have you embedded in their brain? You have embedded a command of no. You've seeded the answer no. So you never want to create a situation where you run the risk of someone saying no, 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 when you're going to ask them to do what? Sign up for your webinar, book a call with you, buy your products, whatever it may be, because you have embedded this idea of no. So we never ask yes, no questions in a marketing quiz funnel like we're talking about right here. That's the first type of question that you absolutely want to avoid. Second type of question, we go to the iPad right now, that you absolutely want to avoid are questions where you are inviting someone to choose all that apply. Where you invite someone to choose more than one answer. Pick all of the following. Why is that the case? Because when you give people choices like this and they're answering multiple questions, a confused mind is a mind that does not take action. You want to lead people, remember, down that grease slide straight into that pair of pants. You want it to be a smooth ride. You don't want people to be stopping halfway down the slide and saying, oh, is it this one? Is it this one? You don't want to create that situation. The other reason why you don't want to do that is, what do you think is the device that most people are taking these quizzes on? They're taking it right here. They're taking it on their phone. And by asking people to choose all that apply, they've got to click on all of the different things. That creates friction. Friction creates bailing. Bailing creates a lack of conversion and sales. So you want to avoid asking people to choose all that apply. And for similar reasons, you want to avoid the third type of question, which is open-ended questions, where you invite people to type in a text-based response. You want to avoid open-ended questions. Now you might be saying, but wait, isn't the ask method all about asking questions? Like, where do these open-ended questions come into play? That comes in the form of a deep dive survey, or a DDS. You can, after someone has taken your quiz, after you've given them their results, you can invite them as the next step, instead of signing up for your webinar, to take your survey, to tell you more about who they are. But you don't want to do that before they've given you their contact information, because you are going to lose so many people in that process. So avoid yes, no questions, avoid choose all that apply, and avoid open-ended text questions as well. All right, so you got a sense for the questions to ask, the questions to avoid. We've touched on questions. Now we're going to turn our attention to, okay, with these questions, with the offer that you're going to be selling, what is your quiz gonna be about? What is that big idea for your quiz? And that is what we're going to be spending our time and attention focusing on right now. All right, big idea behind the quiz. Big idea behind the quiz, also known as the hook, the thing that attracts people to take your quiz, can be broken down into 2 parts. The 2 parts are as follows. We call these parts your quiz topic, which is the first part of the equation. Now, your quiz topic can be quite literally anything under the sun. Here are examples of quiz topics on a whole bunch of different quizzes that have been built in the past. Like, for example, your quiz could be about wearable energy patches. It could be about female empowerment. It could be about surface pattern design. It could be leadership development. It could be, it could be hair extensions. It could be about dating and relationships. It could be about wealth management. It could be about metabolic reset. So your quiz topic could literally be anything under the sun. And by the way, as and when you start getting ideas on what your quiz topic might be, go ahead and start jotting them down in your notes. Put a little section of your notes where you have like kind of quiz ideas. Just start jotting them down. Anytime something comes to mind, I'm just going to keep infusing your mind with examples from different markets. And you might pick one here and there and be, ooh, that's a good idea. I could do something like that. Or you might see one in a totally different market, totally different business, and you're like, oh, I could do something similar to that, but maybe a little bit different. So as and when you get ideas, just start jotting them down in your notes. So that's your quiz topic, the first half of the equation. The second half of the equation is what we call your quiz framework. Now, the good news is, while there are an infinite number of possibilities for your quiz topic, when it comes to your quiz framework, there are only 3 to choose from. Now, we're going to go through an exercise right now where I'm going to invite you to pay close attention to these 3 types of quizzes, and at the end of this little segment, think about which type of quiz makes the most sense for you, makes the most sense for your business. So let's go through each of these 3 types of quizzes and help yourself identify which one is right for you. First type of quiz is what we call a type quiz. Now, a type quiz is where you're putting people into different buckets based on their unique type. Now, why does it work? What's the psychology? Remember, I let you know that I'm a bit of a brain geek. I know we got a lot of brain geeks here. Like, I've just always been a student of human psychology. Like, why does this work? What's the reason or rationale behind it? Well, it looks a little something like this. The psychology has to do with the psychology of what's known as categorical perception. Now, categorical perception is basically the fact that our brains need to organize the world into different categories. When we were young children, we learned the difference between cats and dogs, right? And we'd have like those games that we'd play, and you point at pictures in a book, and very young kids don't know the difference between a cat and a dog because they both are furry, they both have 4 legs, but at some point in your brain's development, you start learning, that's a cat, that's a dog. You start putting things into different buckets. And then very soon thereafter, you start learning there are different types of cats. There are tigers, and there are lions, and there are cheetahs, and there are house cats. And you start to further organize the world into different buckets. Now, what's interesting is that it doesn't matter what the subject or topic is, even if it's something that exists on an infinite spectrum like color. Color is something that exists on a spectrum. There's no such thing in nature as red versus orange versus green versus blue. These are just wavelength distinctions that we as human beings have decided to demarcate different colors. So when we look at this slide right here, we see red and orange and yellow and green and blue and purple and indigo and so on and so forth. Our brain naturally organizes different things into categories. This is how we work. Well, the same thing is true with ourselves. We want to know, where do we fit? We want to know, what box do I belong in? We want to know, when we have something wrong with us from a health perspective, what is the term for this condition, right? When you have something wrong from a health standpoint and you're not sure what it is, it's very anxiety producing. You don't know what's going on, right? But when you know that that pain in your wrist actually has a name, it's not just some weird mystery medical situation, it actually is a condition. When you know that there is a label and it's a thing and that there is a type, what's the next logical conclusion? Well, if there is a label for this situation I'm in, then there must be a solution. And so we naturally want to know our type in all facets of life. So here's an example of a type-based quiz. So for example, in the skincare space, this is a company that did work with years and years and years ago called Proactive. You're probably familiar with the skincare brand. Created a quiz, what is your skin type? Attract, diagnose, and prescribe. Use this quiz to figure out what skincare product is right for an individual based on their skin situation. On day 1, we talked about Neil Gordon and his public speaker type quiz. Attract, diagnose, prescribe, helping people identify what is their public speaker type so that they can become a better public speaker based on their natural style and their natural tendencies as a speaker. Neil created his quiz. Now, Neil's story is super inspiring. We saw Neil briefly in the video just a few moments ago. Pre-COVID, before the pandemic and the world completely was turned upside down, Neil was driving for Lyft. Post-COVID, he launches his quiz funnel and is now making over $100,000 a month. Not a year, a month on the back of his public speaker quiz. So that's an example of a type quiz. We took a look at the weight loss type quiz created by Buck Rizvi and Dr. Steve Siskin. Attract, diagnose, prescribe. Remember, there are 4 different weight loss types: type A, type I, type G, type C. Which one best describes you? Take this quiz to find out now, to figure out what foods to avoid, what exercises to engage in, and what dietary supplementation is right for you. And this quiz right here that Buck created, you can see Buck, generates over $7,000 a day in revenue. So that's a type quiz. Now, it's very different from the second type of quiz, and I'm going to take a moment to write these down. So if you join me in writing these down, we're going to write the 3 types of quizzes. 3 types of quizzes. First one is what? Remember, it's called a type quiz. That is the first type of quiz right here. So we'll go type quiz, and then we'll go number 2, and then we'll go number 3, which we will cover one by one. All right, so that's a type quiz, okay? So type quiz, makes sense? Cool, got it? Got it in your brain? Thinking about it? Possibilities? All right, now let's contrast that to the second type of quiz, which is what we call a killer quiz. Now, killer quiz is a little bit different. Killer quiz is where you help people identify the biggest mistake they're making in their life that's holding them back from getting the results that you help people with in your business. So the thing that people struggle with, you help them with something. What is that thing? The killer quiz helps people identify the biggest mistake or reason why they're not getting a result. Why does it work? Well, the psychology here is the psychology of loss aversion. Basically, what that means in basic terms is that the fear of loss is more powerful than the promise of gain. I'll give you an example of this. Again, I told you I'm a dad, so all my examples are thinking about young kids. I want you to imagine for a moment that you are a parent yourself. If you are a parent, then pretty easy for you to imagine. If you're not a parent, just imagine you're a parent. And imagine you're on social media and you're scrolling on Facebook, let's say, right? And you're scrolling on Facebook, you're looking at a whole bunch of stuff, and then there's a post on Facebook that says, "Attention parents. Discover how to raise a well-adjusted child that will become a contributing member of society. Click on the link below now." All right, that's scenario number 1. Now compare your reaction to that with scenario number 2. Scrolling on Facebook, scroll, you see a post, same thing. "Attention parents. Find out the single biggest mistake that parents make that screw their kids up for life. Click the link below to find out now." Which one is more enticing? Well, if you're like most people, it's probably number 2, right? And the reason for that is this mistakes angle, this fear of loss is such a compelling argument for people. We want to know, what are we doing wrong? And so the mistakes quiz or the killer quiz is where this comes into play. So for example, I shared an example of a financial planning quiz. What's the number 1 retirement mistake you're making in your financial planning? Take the quiz to find out now. Attract, diagnose, prescribe. Another example, Charlie Wallace, the guitarist that I mentioned. What is the single biggest mistake you're making playing the guitar? What's killing your progress? Attract, diagnose, and prescribe. Now, as I teased a little bit earlier, Charlie, who you can see right here, used this quiz to quite literally go from nothing. He was a struggling musician at one point, believe it or not. He was sleeping in the back of his car. He starts teaching guitar lessons online, hears about the power of a quiz funnel through a workshop like this, decides to work with me and our team to create his quiz funnel. On the back of his quiz funnel, he builds a $2.2 million a year business. He gets named by Entrepreneur Magazine as one of the top 10 entrepreneurs under the age of 30. And here's the coolest thing. He's able to fund his dream. The money that he makes from his business, he's able to fund his dream and launch his debut record album, which lands on the Billboard charts. It's a heavy metal album. It's like a hard rock album, of the best-selling albums on the week that he launched. Here, golf swing killers quiz. This says Justin Tupper. It should say Justin Tupper. Justin Tupper with Jim McLean created this quiz right here, the golf swing killer quiz. Attract, diagnose, and prescribe. What's cool about this quiz was so successful that Justin built a business that one day he got a phone call from a company that you've probably heard of called NBC, who made an offer to buy his entire business because he was generating upwards of 3,000 to 5,000 people per day taking this quiz, upwards of $100,000 a day in revenue. And in case you want to hear the story from Justin himself and how powerful and transformational the quiz funnel was for him, We have an episode of our podcast, the Kick Ask podcast, that we just launched earlier this year. And you can see right here how Justin Tupper sold his company to NBC for a life-changing amount of money, all on the back of his quiz. You can hear that story right there. And if you love listening to other stories, you can hear all sorts of stories of people who are using a quiz funnel in their own words and the results that they've gotten. People like Carrie Green, who went to over 110,000 leads using her quiz funnel, and all sorts of people from total beginners to experienced business owners and more. You can even hear a little bit more about my personal story on how I got started and how this all happened. That takes us to our third quiz framework. So if we go back to the iPad right here, we got our first type of quiz, which is a type quiz. Second quiz framework is what we call a killer quiz, just like the examples that we looked at a moment ago. Third type of quiz is what we call a score quiz. Now, score quiz is a little bit different. A score quiz is when you are helping people identify a score in an area of their life that represents where they are relative to where they want to be or where they should be based on that area of their life. Why does it work so well? What's the psychology here? Psychology is the psychology of what's called social comparison theory. Basically, what that means is this. The way that we make sense of the world is we are constantly comparing ourselves to other people. Now, we know we shouldn't do it, right? We've all been told, don't compare yourself to anybody else, but still it's hard for our brain to resist. We always want to know, how is it that she's more successful than me? How is it that he's gotten a better raise than I have? How come she's getting more results inside the gym than I am with the workouts and weight loss program that she's in? We're constantly in this comparison mode all the time. And we do that to help make sense of the world. It's just the way that our brain naturally works. So a score-based quiz helps people identify where they are relative to where they should be. Now, naturally, that creates a gap in their brain, where they are right now, where they should be, where they want to be. And how does someone close that gap? They buy your product or service. And that's why the score-based quiz is so effective. So let's take a look at a few examples behind the score-based quiz, again, which works because we compare ourselves to other people. Like, for example, the Success Alignment Score by Dr. Tanji Watkins, Attract, Diagnose, and Prescribe. Take this quiz to find out how aligned you are in your career. That's the quiz that Dr. Tanji used to go from $0 to $20,000 a month in her first month on the back of her quiz. Brand new business with no website, no product, no experience, no nothing, using this process to get results. The Digital Readiness Score quiz by Dev Basu of Powered by Search, Attract, Diagnose, Prescribe. Dev has a digital marketing agency that he's used to figure out what a business's digital readiness score is to go from offline to online, and he uses that to generate clients for his agency. His agency, by the way, is one of the fastest growing agencies in all of Canada, incredibly successful with a little bit of help from this quiz. So our next micro assignment right here, right now. First step in the process that I want to invite you to take right here, right now, 3 types of quizzes. We go to our iPad. We've got type, we've got killer, and we've got score. Take a moment to reflect on everything that we just talked about. And if you had to pick one to start with, which one do you think might make the most sense for you? Go ahead and type it inside the chat on the screen. Type, killer, or score. Just type the word type if you're going with type. Type the word killer if you're going with killer. Type the word score if you're thinking that you're going to go with score. So type, killer, or score. Go ahead, post it inside the comment thread. I'm going to take a quick sip of water here, and we're going to take a look and see how we stack up as a group. Type, killer, or score. Got a lot of scores, got a lot of killers. Could use all 3. Killer, score. William, score, score, score. Killer, killer, killer. Type, Dylan, killer. Laura, killer. Jane, killer. Yvonne, killer. Roz, type. Deb, score. Bonnie says type. Dawn, killer. Richie, killer. John, killer. Mike, type. Beverly, type. Kim, killer. Brandy, score. Ebony, score. Love it. White, Terry, sorry, Gigi, killer. Rhea, type. Jasmina or Hasmina, killer. David, score. Early bird, type. Donna, score. Type. Killer. Type. Killer. Score, type, got a good mix right here. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. I know we've been sitting here, we've been working here, we're working hard. We're gonna do a quick little micro sort of physical exercise right now. This is just gonna get our body moving, get ourselves energized, because now we're gonna go through the step-by-step process of figuring out your big idea. We've got all this background information swimming around in your brain. So let's take a moment to let our unconscious mind process all this information. Let's just let it soak in a little bit, and join me and just stand up real quick. All right, so stand up right now. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna create some great kinetic energy in our body to kind of allow this information to absorb in our body and put it into action, because we're going to be moving into action mode now. We want to get our bodies moving. So first things first, here is what we're going to do. We're going to rub our hands together. So stand up and do this. Rub your hands together. Create a little bit of heat. Create a little bit of friction. It's going to create a little bit of energy. Yeah, you might start sweating a little bit if it's 100 degrees like it is here in Texas right now. And then what you're going to do is you're going to ship that same thing, but you're going to do it on your arm. So create some good friction, some good energy. If it's cold, if it's hot, do the same thing. And then you're going to move to this part of your arm right here, right? And this is critical. That part where your elbow bends on the other side. You do the same thing on the other side. Excuse me. Rub this arm. Get it moving. Yeah, you should feel some good energy moving right now. And then that piece right there, right? Now we're going to do the same thing with our legs. Go the space behind your knees. You're going to rub it behind your knees. Right behind that knees. Get some good energy right there. Create that connection in your body. Rub the back of your calves. Back of your calves. Yeah. Great work. And now what we're going to do is we do the same thing on our back right here. Kind of like start at your rib cage, go down to your waist, get to your hips. Just rub that lower back. And then we're going to do the same thing up here. Rub this back right now. Other side, rub the back right now. Let's take a big, deep breath in. And then a deep breath out. All right. You've now created a brain, body, and mind connection that's going to put you into action for this next segment of our time here together, where we're going to come up with the big idea. The information is now consolidated in your brain, and we are going to put this all into action. So you might be wondering, all right, with all this information, how do you actually come up with your big idea? Well, we're going to go through the 3 steps right now. 3 steps to coming up with your big idea. And it all begins, first and foremost, with coming up with your quiz topic. And we'll stay right there for just a second as I pull something up. And I want to invite you to join me in actually taking time to write this down. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to come up with your quiz topic. This is step 1. So step 1 of the process to come up with your big idea. Let's get clarity on the topic behind your quiz. Okay, so your topic right here. Now, there are ways to come up with your topic. And I know some of you, you might feel like, oh, I've got exactly what my topic is. And some of you still might be struggling with that. And that's totally okay. I'm going to give you 5 different ideas, 5 different prompts to think about what your topic might be for your quiz. Because like I said, there are just an infinite number of possibilities. How do you know which one's right for you? Well, let's talk about some possibilities. First possibility, number 1, is what is a question that people are always asking about in your market? What's something that people are always wondering about, right? Always asking in their market. Like in my market, people are always wondering, what traffic source should I use? Like, what traffic source is right for me? What's a question that people are always asking in your market? Okay, that's the first idea, the first prompt. Second possibility, and by the way, as I share these with you, if an idea pops into your brain and you come up with something, just jot it down in that little section of your notes where you're sharing your ideas with yourself. Just post it inside that little section of your notes. All right, so the second prompt, as you're thinking about your topic, is what is something that people care a tremendous amount about or are insanely curious about? So this is called care or curious. Care or curious. This could be something that people are just insanely curious about learning more about. Like for example, I never really realized that I have, unique feet. We all think this, right? I'm just a fictitious example. This is not me having a conversation with myself, just a fictitious example. I never really realized that I have, this unique shape to my feet, and I didn't realize that it impacts the way that I run. If I, when it comes to pronation, and if I've got an instep and a high arch and a flat arch and just all of these different things, I'm really curious to know what it means about my health and my gait and my posture and so on and so forth. So that could be something that is just, an insightful and curiosity-inducing topic that people might want to learn more about in your market. If you serve runners, for example, right? So what's something that people care about or are insanely curious about? Next one is, what about something that is in the media right now? We call this media mentions. This is kind of like what we call newsjacking, where you're hijacking the news cycle. So what is something that is dominating the news cycle right now that you're hearing a lot about in your market, that people keep talking about, people keep posting about? What is that media mention topic that's happening all the time? Next is number 4, which is myths or misconceptions. Myths or misconceptions. So what are things that are myths in your market that people are constantly getting wrong? They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that people have this totally wrong, where you can dispel these myths. What's a topic in your market that represents myths or misconceptions in your market? And last but not least, what is a topic that has a high potential of either loss or gain? Meaning the stakes are really high, that someone stands to lose a lot or gain a lot by getting the results. For example, if someone gets, I don't know, their estate planning wrong, well, the stakes are really high because it could mean the difference between passing an inheritance to their children and grandchildren, or not having anything to share at all because their estate planning strategy is all wrong. So there's a huge potential of loss and a huge potential of gain in a topic like that. So these are some thought starters that you can think about coming up with your quiz. Again, a topic that people are always asking about, either your clients, your prospects, you see it in your community, you see it posted in groups online all the time, frequently asked questions, something that people are incredibly curious about, right? They really want to know what it is. Something that's being mentioned in the media all the time, common myths or misconceptions in your market, or something that represents a huge loss or gain. Now, you might have something that checks off all of those boxes, one of those boxes, none of those boxes, and that's okay. These are just thought starters to help you think about what your quiz topic might be. All right? So that's the first step, is your quiz topic. Now, if we look at your quiz framework, then, if we look at the screen here, the next step is your quiz framework, right? So we talked about every quiz hook or big idea is made up of 2 pieces. So we've got your quiz topic, which we talked about right here. And then we also have, now we go to step 2, your quiz framework. Now remember, your framework is basically type, killer, or score. Which one is right for you? Now, you might be very clear and know exactly which framework is right for you, or you might still be struggling. And if you are struggling or you'd like some additional insight into which one might make the most sense for you, let me give you some tips. If you are in a business where you can put people into different categories, based on their answer, then you might be a great fit for a type quiz. Okay, so if you can put people in different categories, it might be a type quiz. If you're in a business where you help people identify the mistake that they're making, you might want to consider using a killer quiz. So if you are in the mistake diagnosis business, helping people identify the mistake that they might be making, you might want to use a mistake quiz. And last but not least, if you help people on a journey of success. So in other words, you help people go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, go from white belt to red belt to brown belt to black belt. You might want to consider putting people into a score quiz. So a score quiz is the 3rd step. So I'll do a different color to make that a little bit more clear. Let's go green, do here. All right. So categories into type, if you're putting people from mistakes into killer, and journey into score. So that is the second part of the equation. And then what you're going to do, I'm going to shrink this down a little bit so I have a little bit more space to work with. See if I can do that. Whoop. There we go. Whoop. That went back to the same size, didn't it? Let's try this one more time. Da-da-da-da. Oop. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna try it a third time, and if third time is not the charm, then we're just gonna say, you know what? We're just gonna work with what we got. Boop, boop. Not letting me shrink it here today. That is all good. All right, so let's talk about our third step. So our third step of this process is once you've identified your topic, once you've identified your framework, the third and final step, step 3, and I'll have to write this a little bit small in the space that we have, is to identify your top 4 ideas. So your top 4 ideas. And to do that, we are going to use the resource that you have access to that I invited you to download at the beginning of this session, which I'll dive into in just a moment. But you're going to identify your topic possibilities, your framework possibilities, and then identify your top 4 ideas for your quiz. So let's take a look at a few examples of what this looks like in action. You've got, actually, to do this, let's go into the Big Idea workbook, and then I'll show you some results. All right, so if we go to my screen right here, you're gonna see the Big Idea workbook. Again, the way that you download this is at the bottom of this page. You're going to see the Big Idea workbook. Click that orange button that says download now. That's going to give you access to this document right here. And this is what you want to use to do your homework from today's session. This is going to be your homework after we finish up here today. This is how you're going to decide and define the big idea behind your quiz. 3 steps to the process: brainstorm your topic, brainstorm your framework, choose your top 4 big ideas. So brainstorming your topic. I gave you just dozens of different examples and ways that you can figure out what your topic might be. So here are some other topic tips. Like, for example, the top 3 to 5 challenges that people are running into in your niche. What's a topic that people are always asking about? What's one of your best selling topic areas if you've got multiple products that you might sell? Like if you help people lose weight, have more energy, and get better sleep. If your sleep product is your best selling topic, maybe you create a quiz about sleep. What's something that people care about, they're curious about? So you've got all these kind of topic tips right here. And what you want to do is just take a moment to brainstorm your possibilities. Brainstorm your possible topic ideas right here on this page. All right, that's step 1. Once you've done that, then you want to brainstorm your framework. So what are you going to be making this quiz about? Are you going to help identify a person's type? Is it going to be a killer, or is it going to be a score? So for example, promotion readiness score, promotion readiness would be the topic, and score would be the framework. All right. Again, some tips, just like the ones that I shared with you here in this document, so you can use this and you can do this tonight when you're going to be doing this homework. And once again, you're going to brainstorm what your framework is. Now, we've also included some additional words, terms that you can use in place of type killer score. So type killer score, think about that as like the header, the category, but you don't have to use the word type. You don't have to use the word killer. Like I know for many of you, you might be in a softer market where the word killer is like too aggressive of a word. You might want to consider using a word like blind spot or hurdle or limitation. See how that works? These are all different words that you can use to describe your quiz. And you're going to have to mix and match and play around with it a little bit to see what rolls off the tongue, what sounds good, what sounds right for your business. And then you're going to combine, you're going to identify any additional words that you might want to use. These words are not exhaustive by any stretch of the imagination. There's probably 1,000 other words that you could come up with, but this will just help you kind of get things started. Put any other ideas that you have. And then what you're going to do is you're going to come up with your top 4 ideas combining your topic and framework, right? So list your possible big ideas and put a check marks next to your top 4. So an example would be, and by the way, you always want to start it with the word quiz in all caps. Quiz, what is your skin type? Quiz, what is your fitness score? Quiz, what is your sleep profile? And so on and so forth. So these are examples. Type, score, profile, killer, those are all different frameworks. Topic, skin, fitness, sleep, stamina. Now you might be sold. You might say, I know exactly what my quiz is going to be about. It's going to be about skin. But I don't know if it's skin type, if it's skin blind spot, if it's skin weakness, if it's skin profile. I don't know what that is quite yet, but I'm going to jot down all the possibilities. I want to remind you as you're going through this process, sometimes you have to come up with bad ideas in order to come up with a good idea. So allow yourself permission to just put whatever ideas come to mind. So list your big ideas here and then put a check mark or a star or something next to your top 4 ideas. And then what you're going to do is you're going to choose your top 4 ideas, grab a screenshot or take a photo of you and those top 4 big ideas, and then head on over to the Facebook group and post what those are. So, for example, you might want to, download and print the PDF and put your information in there like that. You might want to just write them in and take a shot like Michelle from our team here is doing on the work that she did. If you like to do sort of analog, I want to remind you that there are points for participation, and the more you participate, the better chance you've got to win. So there's some real incentives to doing this. Not to mention, by actually taking action on this, you are going to be capitalizing on the momentum that you have from today and actually putting this into practice right here. That is the homework. Those are the next steps. And I want to show you examples of what this looks like in action. All right. So here's an example. I shared the wearable energy patch example a few minutes ago. Here's an example of the top 4 ideas from this possible quiz. Quiz, what's your energy vitality score? What's your #1 energy vitality killer? What's your body's energy pattern, and what's your body's, your focus capability score, and what's your body's energy pattern, as you can see right there. Next, female empowerment. Quiz, do you know your assertiveness type? Quiz, what's your #1 confidence killer? Quiz, do you know your empowerment score? Quiz, identify your biggest boundary breaker. Another example. This is Anne LaFollette's surface pattern design quiz top 4 ideas. What's your unique doodling style? What's your unique sketching style? What's your #1 creativity blocker? And what is your creativity profile? Leadership development by T. Mosley. Quiz, what's your leadership pitfall? What's your strategic planning pitfall? What's your team performance pitfall? What's your leadership strategic pitfall? Here's another example. This is Melinda Hurt and her hair extension quiz ideas. What's your hair extension match? Hair extension type? What hair extensions are right for you? And are hair extensions right for you? This is Dating Relationships, Tony Fonderson. Quiz, what's your relationship personality? What's your relationship readiness score? #1 dating blind spot. Which relationships mistakes are you potentially making? Here's a wealth management example. Ann Wilson. What's your wealth health score? What's your money story identity? Your biggest freedom blocker or your money flow type? This is Dr. Aaron Choi, a naturopathic physician. Metabolic reset quiz. Quiz, what's your metabolic health score? What's your weight loss type? What's your body's detox ability score? And what's your body's #1 energy killer? Now, I know for some of you, you might be saying, gosh, I don't know what my quiz is going to be about. I would recommend just picking a practice quiz. Keep the momentum going. Pick a practice quiz. Just pick something so that you can get practice learning this process that we're covering here today. So for example, if you're not sure what to do, I'd recommend just find a possible market, an idea where you can help people solve a problem. And so there are a few different types of markets that do incredibly well. Health markets, wealth markets, so help people lose weight or help people get fit. Help people make money, help people save money. Relationship markets, help people have a better relationship with their child, with their partner, with themselves. Hobby markets are great. Get better at a sport, music, art, etc. And by the way, if you're not sure right now, you're like, I'm just stuck. I don't know what to do. I'm going to invite you right here, right now. Just pick one from the following list. So if you're interested in the health market, pick from one of the following. It could be stress relief, muscle building, best diet. Pick one of those 3. If you want to be in a wealth market, pick one of the following. Sales skills, leadership, or retirement. All 3 are great ideas, by the way. Relationships, dating advice, parenting, or marriage. Or if you want to go into a hobby market, pick photography, songwriting, or tennis. Any one of these markets could potentially work. It's the same process no matter what. And this process that we're going through right now is the same exact process that every single one of the examples that I've shared with you over the last few days has used to get the results that you've heard me talk about. Like, for example, Dana Abraham, who has a quiz, the child behavior type quiz that generates over $1,254 per day. She's a mom of 3 kids, and if she can do it, you can absolutely do it. Jamal Miller went from $17 an hour to $500,000 a year on the back of his Why Are You Still Single quiz. If Jamal can do it, you can do it. Neil Gordon went from driving for Lyft to making over $100,000 a month. If Neil can do it, you can do it. Charlie went from doing nothing living in the back of his car to making over $2 million a year teaching people how to play guitar online. If Charlie can do it, you can do it. And all sorts of regular people in all sorts of different markets are using this exact process. Like, for example, you can see here Greg Lee, $17,000 a month for his medical facility. Rafael DiBernardo, $22,000 a week on the back of this bike quiz. You can see Donna Schwartz, her saxophone quiz allowed her to leave her job as a teacher, now make over $150,000 a year teaching saxophone online. You can see here Mae Ferguson, from nothing to 6 figures on the back of her quiz, on pace to make over $800,000 this year. You heard examples in all sorts of different languages, like Gabby and Luis, who generated over 1 million leads in less than 30 days in their parenting quiz in the Spanish market and Espanol. You see here, excuse me, take a sip of water real quick. I had a fly or something that just landed in my throat. Beverly Asante Pushman went from literally no list, no nothing, to a #1 Amazon bestseller practically overnight on the back of her quiz. Dr. Tangi Watkins went from nothing to $20,000 a month in her first month on the back of her quiz. And you can see here, Jody Hoffman Daniels, 0 to over $1 million a year, all in the back of her quiz. So this is the process. And what we're talking about right here, right now, today, is the first step. This is the first step in the process to creating your very own high-converting, highly successful quiz. All right, so let's talk a little bit about next steps. Where do you go from here? I know it's been a full session. It's been a big session. It's been a lot going on this session. It's been an action-taking session, and I love all the action that you're taking right here, right now. But let's talk a little bit about next steps and where we go from here after today's session. So first things first, your first assignment is to complete that homework. And we went through that homework. Again, what you want to do is you want to go to the page that we're on right now. You want to scroll to the bottom of the page where it says Big Idea Workbook, download that Big Idea Workbook, and you want to use this as your guide to come up with your top 4 big ideas. Once you've identified those top 4 big ideas, you want to share them inside the Facebook group and use the hashtag #MyBigIdea. This helps us track what you've posted, what you've shared when it comes to prizes and contests and all that good stuff. And let us know with a screenshot, a photo of your top 4 big ideas. Extra points if you've got a smiling photo of yourself there. Extra points for creativity, just like you can see Michelle here sharing her top 4 ideas and showing the work that she used to get there. So that's the first piece of homework. And you want to post that inside the Facebook group. Once again, the way you get access to the Facebook group is by going to quizfunnel.com/Facebook. That's quizfunnel.com/Facebook. That's going to take you into that Facebook group where you get to post your work and see all the great activity that's happening right there. One of the other big benefits of posting your top 4 ideas is that you might just get some feedback from some other members of the community. Other people who might say, oh, I like this one versus that one. So it's a great way to get a little bit of feedback as you start thinking about what your top 4 ideas might be. So that is assignment #1. Second thing is tomorrow I'm going to be hosting yet another Q&A session. Yesterday's Q&A session was on fire. I think we had almost 1,000 people who were there, which was a lot of fun. And it was an opportunity to get your questions answered. And in tomorrow's session, we're going to do something a little bit fun where I might just take a few possible markets, a few possible ideas to come up with maybe a few possible quiz ideas. So if you would love to get your questions answered, if you would love to post a possibility, go ahead to the Facebook group, quizfunnel.com/Facebook. And we actually have a special link for the Q&A thread. I believe it is quizfunnel.com/question, quizfunnel.com/question. And it's going to take you straight to a dedicated post inside the Facebook group that looks a little something like the one on my screen right here. And you can see here there are 335 questions posted already. We covered a whole bunch of them on our Q&A session yesterday. I'm going to do another Q&A session tomorrow to pick up where we left off. So if you've got a question that you are wanting to know about, this is a great opportunity to do this. I want to remind you, keep your questions short, keep them brief, keep them concise, keep them relevant, and think about your question and asking your question in such a way that it will be as helpful and useful to as many people as possible. if you see somebody else's question that you really, really, really like, make sure that you click the like button on that person's question. So scan the other questions and you're like, ooh, that's a good one. I'd like to know the answer to that myself. Use the like button or the love button, and what that'll do is it'll let me know that we should curate those questions. Like the ones that the most people want to know the answers to, I'll bump those to the top of the list. And so that's how we ensure that we're covering the information that's going to be as helpful to as many people as possible. So think about asking a good question, and think about what other questions you would love to get answered by liking or hitting the love heart button on Facebook. So that is the question thread. Speaking of threads, we have a secret text message thread where you get access to all sorts of secret extra bonus content that you do not get anywhere else. Like one piece of content that I think will be really, 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 really helpful for you in this specific exercise here today, and that is our resource, 101 Quiz Funnel Ideas. So we have 101 quiz funnel ideas that you can use to browse, to think about, to get ideas for what your quiz might be. And you can get access to that when you go to the link quizfunnel.com/text. It's going to take you to a screen that looks like this. All you need to do is put your email address in, your phone number, and we will text you that resource that you see right there, as well as a whole bunch of other great resources that you only get access to when you're part of my secret text message thread. Like, for example, the visual guide, Quiz Funnels Explained, the ultimate illustrated guide to creating a quiz funnel step by step, which I think you might love. If we come back to me for a second, I've got something else that I'll share with you, which is my notes from each day. So for example, if you want to get my notes from each day, like the notes from day one, you get access to these notes here in this document in the screen when you go to quizfunnel.com/text. I'll text you a copy of my notes after each session, so you get access to that as well. Next thing that I want to draw your attention to as we talk about the final few steps is if you've got someone in your life that you think could benefit from being here, this once-a-year workshop that we're in the middle of right now. If there's someone in your life, it could be a business friend, it could be a buddy of yours, it could be someone in your community, it could be other people that you're learning with, it could be a community that you're part of, anybody at all that you think could benefit from this workshop. I would love to invite you to invite them to join. And I'd love to give you a gift of letting them join us for free by going to the link quizfunnel.com/friendpass. So you can offer this up to any friend that you'd like to invite to join inside this workshop. And again, this workshop ends this week. It's only this week, and after this week, it's all done. So now's the time to do this. Quizfunnel.com/friendpass will get them to join. And when they go to that page, it's going to look a little something like this. You can invite them to go to the link quizfunnel.com/friendpass. And what it'll do is it'll actually take the price of this workshop from $100 down to $0 for them by using the coupon code FriendPass. Just let them know. Make sure you give the right URL. It's QuizFunnel singular, QuizFunnel, not an S, quizfunnel.com/friendpass. And they will get access to all of that and more. All right. We got a few final orders of business that we're going to wrap things up with, and we're going to talk about next steps and where to go from here. But before we do that, I always like to end our days with an exercise that I think really brings everything all together, and that is the takeaway exercise. So what I'd love to invite you to do is inside the chat right now, using #takeaway, to take a moment to think about what's been your biggest takeaway from today's session. Go ahead, post it inside the chat. Was it a tip? Was it a aha moment? Was it an idea that you got from your quiz? Was it the process of coming up with the big idea? Was it how to come up with your topic? Was it the 3 types of quizzes to choose from? Was it something about the questions that you want to ask in your quiz? The questions that you never want to ask? The different examples that we shared here today. It could be anything, big or small. What's been your single biggest takeaway from today's session? Go ahead inside the chat, post that takeaway now, and I'll take a moment to read some of our biggest takeaways of the day. So takeaways inside the chat. Takeaway, all the different funnel types. Takeaway, I realize I can do this. Yeah, I love it. Takeaways is Peter, that what not to ask. Dennis says takeaway, the process. Take it isn't rocket science. Follow the process and start. Yes, we have started with step 1 here today. Love it. Questions to avoid. I have several quizzes in me where I thought I only had half a quiz, says Marie. Love it. Takeaway, do the homework. Takeaway, keep the momentum. Get your 4 big ideas tonight. Love it. Don, takeaway, the organization of a funnel in the form of a quiz. Lisa says the frameworks. James, takeaway, framework presented to finalize my quiz. Love it. Helen says takeaway, what question types to use and which ones to avoid. Takeaway, the power of quiz funnels. Tony, takeaway, the calculator. Yes, remember that calculator. You can access that as well. Donna, the 3 types of quizzes. Adriana, the Band-Aid versus cure. Love it. Susan, the framework. Mark says the 3 types of quizzes. Daniela says no yes or no questions and no select all that apply. Lynn says topics and quiz types. Takeaway, the psychology, says Becky. Leah, love that. Takeaway, says Pri, they don't know they need the cure. Christina says takeaway, it is a simple process. It is simplicity on the far side of complexity is exactly what it is. Vanessa, takeaway, Band-Aid to cure. Hook is most important, says Kathy. Philippe says takeaway, the 3 types of quizzes. Takeaway, the journal full of ideas. Takeaway, the process indeed. And I love seeing takeaway after takeaway after takeaway. This is beautiful. All right. Before we wrap things up, I want to leave you with one last thing for today. Now, I want to tease what we're going to be covering in our 3rd installment of this workshop. Our 3rd installment is where we're going to take a look at the big picture. So we went deep today on one tiny little step of the process. On our 3rd day together, we're going to be going big picture and looking at how all the pieces fit together. We're going to be talking about everything from traffic to technology. And for those of you who are the techno geeks wanting to get your hands on the technology and see what it actually looks like behind the scenes, on our 3rd installment of this workshop, where everything all comes together, where we reveal the quiz funnel blueprint in its entirety, we're going to do a deep dive into the technology. I'm going to show you how you actually technically create one of these quizzes step by step. So you're going to see all the different pieces, all the different elements, how you connect everything behind the scenes. And you're going to see the layers and why there's so many things happening behind the scenes that actually are responsible for the success of the quiz. Again, it's not as simple as just slapping a few questions on your website and calling it a day. You're going to see why the quizzes that you have seen over the last few days are so successful and what they're doing to make it all possible. So everything from traffic to technology and everything in between, it all gets revealed on day 3, where we're going to go through the entire quiz funnel blueprint step by step, all the pieces from choosing the right market for a quiz, to choosing the right traffic for your quiz, to choosing the right technology for your quiz, and all the pieces in between. So same time, same channel, same place that we were here today. You absolutely want to be here, because remember, on Saturday this week, this is when this workshop ends. So mark your calendar. We've got a session on Friday, and we got our final session together on Saturday, where we're going to talk about next steps and where you go from here once this workshop wraps up and we close the doors. But in the meantime, I want to leave you with something here today that I thought would be a great way to wrap our session. Now, if you remember from day 1, yesterday and the day before, if we go to our screen, day 1, we talked about the different fastest paths to cash. And one of the fastest paths to cash we talked about was building quizzes for clients, building quizzes for other people. Now, I know many of you here are intending on building your quiz for yourself and for your own business, which is really, really awesome and really, really exciting. What we find when we start working with clients and we start working with students is that many people start to fall in love with the actual process of creating a quiz. They say, hey, creating quizzes like this is kind of fun. And creating quizzes can be incredibly lucrative as well. I mean, heck, I shared my story of how I would build quizzes for anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000 up front, plus $5,000 a month in a monthly retainer to maintain the quiz, and then royalty payments of 5% or more on the gross sales. And I'd have royalty payments, checks landing in my mailbox for, some cases a few $1,000s a month, in other cases tens of thousands of dollars a month, like the ones that you see right here. And we have all sorts of students who are doing this right now, and you heard about a few of these students. Like, for example, Adam, a former quiz newbie, a newbie quiz builder who had never done this before, built his first quiz, charged over $10,000 to build his first quiz ever for his client. And people like Marvin, who is building quizzes for clients charging $15,000 or more. And you know the expression, you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Marvin started doing this at an age when most people are thinking about and planning for retirement. So you can do this no matter what. Now, I thought it'd be really inspiring to hear from a woman who is using this exact path herself. Someone who has had an incredibly exciting and compelling story, who transitioned out of her career and is able to now make more money designing, creating, and building quizzes for other people than she was in her former career. So as we wrap things up here today, and before I say goodbye and see you tomorrow, I want to leave you with a story that will, I hope, leave you feeling inspired and excited about the future. So let's check it out.
I remember a call where we started brainstorming what our audience of 60 and 70-year-old women, what their pain points were. None of us were women the ages 60 or 70. We were just thinking about, okay, if I were that old, what would I be thinking? What would I be saying? And we just came up with a whole bunch of stuff. And we used that as copy to get our audience to sign up for the summit. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way to serve this demographic. I have spent over a decade in corporate. I'd go into large corporations and I would do leadership development and team building and change management with those companies. I felt like I was able to make somewhat of a difference, but wasn't really making a huge difference. And I remember probably about once a year, I would end up buying a book on some kind of business. I was just trying to find something that I could do that was outside of corporate so that I could have my own business and I could have the lifestyle that I wanted. I didn't know where to begin. I would talk with an entrepreneur about their solution and I would be so excited about it. I'd be like, oh, the world needs to know about this. So I would start just helping just because I thought that the solution was so amazing. I was realizing I knew nothing about marketing. So I ran in circles trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to do next? Once I learned the Ask Method, the first thing I did was to implement with the clients that I already had and get really good results. As I was doing that work, they became my mouthpiece and I started getting referrals from them. That's when I started really seeing how you can get the specific pain points and the wording of those pain points from the audience and use it in your copy. It's like having a really intimate conversation with your audience that they would normally have in their heads. And they feel like you're on their side, that you've got their back. Before, it felt like I was just making up what I thought the audience's pain points were. I would feel frustrated, I would feel anxious about the results, I would feel like, okay, do I really know what I'm doing here? Is this really going to work? And after the Ask Method, we ended up doubling our conversion with opt-ins and doubling our sales conversion. So we ended up quadrupling our results. Now I have a proven formula for getting the results that I know I can get. All I need is to find someone whose product that I fully believe in and work on the marketing for them, and that's really fulfilling to me. By focusing on the marketing of other people's businesses, I've found that it really frees me up to travel and go on vacation, and not necessarily working vacations, real vacations. Because I don't have something that I have to maintain all the time. I'm actually on track to quadruple what I was making before. I feel like I've got the work that I want to do, and I'm able to make time for the travel that I want to have, and I've got the clients that I want to have too. It's just a really amazing feeling to know what I'm doing now.